What up? My name is Khalil, and this is the Marjorie Park Podcast. I took a bit of a hiatus, but I'm back, and I'm better than ever. And I'm back with a little spin on the podcast. I'm introducing a segment this episode. It's called Music Talk. Music Talk basically follows the same parameters I've set up for the rest of the podcast for the general episodes, except it's going to focus on, you guessed it, music. You know, exactly like the rest of the podcast, just me giving my opinions, talking about a little bit of music history, maybe some album reviews, some artist profiles. Eventually, I'd like to do some interviews with local artists, but we'll get to that. Don't worry. Today, I'm going to be covering 3 different topics. The first is going to be just me giving my thoughts on Burna Boy and his latest album, African Giant. Number 2 is me sharing my thoughts. It's a bit of a rant, honestly. It's kind of all over the place. If you get lost, I don't blame you. I didn't have a thesis for that one. It's all over the place, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on how I view violence in hip hop and basically my questions surrounding the responsibility of the listener. The third topic is actually a story. For me, it was a really profound experience revolving around music, and it's something that I'd really like to share. And if anyone would like to, I'd really like to discuss it in a message or drop a comment or something. Anyway, without further ado, this is Music Talk on episode 4 of the Marjorie Park Podcast. First off, let's talk about Burna Boy, the African giant, Nigerian superstar. This guy's taking over right now. I don't really have, I didn't write an essay about Burna Boy, but I just wanted to share my thoughts. This guy, I've been really feeling his latest album. See, I was fucking with Burna Boy before, but this last album, African Giant, it's nice. I used to like Burna Boy for the songs. I liked a couple songs here and there, but with this album, it totally changed everything. Honestly, I like every single song except the ones with Future and YG. We'll get into that later, but I think what he's doing with music is it's really original, and I love how he's so in touch with his roots. He reps Africa I'm not saying nobody's done it before, but he's doing it in his own way and with a certain swag. And I saw an interview with him, and he was talking about how African artists they're just doing their thing. He was talking about the importance of not looking to the US, specifically the American music industry, for approval. You know, these are people that have been kind of left in the shadows of the American music industry. African artists have been largely ignored. I can't think of a single African artist that has made it mainstream in the US. There must have been a few. I must be having a brain fart, but I don't think they do their own type of music. I think they're doing hip hop or R&B. But Burna Boy is true to his roots and true to these Afrobeats, Afropop, what he calls Afrofusion, because he's mixing everything. And his music is really interesting because he has this sound of traditional West African pop music, I guess. But he's also, obviously, it's got a modern spin on it. And he's incorporating elements of other genres like dancehall, reggae, hip hop, R&B, and it's fucking dope. Man, I love it so much. I memorized all the lyrics to a song in Nigerian pidgin English. You know you love a song when you memorize all the words in a different language. I love his features. He's got a few Americans on there. I don't like any of them except the song with Jeremiah is cool. But the ones with Future and YG, I don't really get what he was doing with them. They don't fit at all. I don't know if he was trying to just make his record more appealing to maybe an American audience or people who are more familiar with hip hop than Afrobeats. I'm not sure. I would kind of lead towards no because of the comments I've heard him make previously about just not trying to seek validation from the US. But then I don't really understand what he was doing. Like, what was he going for there? YG's doing some fake Jamaican accent, talking some bullshit patois. It's corny and I cringe every time I hear it. The Future is not that bad, but I just don't like the song. But yeah, the one with Jeremiah and Serrani is dope. The one with Georgia Smith, of course, Gumbody, is sick. I really love the song with Damian Marley, Different. That's dope. The opening line is sick. Don't know we different style we delivering. I don't have no equivalent. Yeah, it's so swaggy, braggadocious. It's dope. The song with Manifest, who's a Ghanaian artist, the song is called Another Story. It's really cool. I can't stand the first minute because I've heard it a million times, and it's it's not really a skit, but it's just a guy talking about basically the formation of Nigeria, how it began as a colony of England and then gained its independence in the 1960s, I believe. But that shit's just annoying once you hear the song a million times. So I always skip a minute ahead. It's kind of annoying though, because, I'm walking around listening to music and then I got to pull out my phone and... Burna Boy, if you're listening, enough with the minute-long skits at the beginning of a song. Stop. I also think this album, because of its fusion of genres, I think it's a really good starting point for people who don't really listen to this type of music. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got some tracks you can bump in the club. It's got some tracks for chilling. It's got some baby making music. A little bit of everything. So if you don't know Burna Boy, you're missing out. And last thing I'm going to say about this is album of the summer, hands down, no debate. Nah, fuck that. My favorite album of 2019, African Giant by Burna Boy. Check it out. The second topic is a little bit heavier. Let's just go with that. I'll give some background. So I became infatuated with hip hop from a really young age. Starting when I was 9 up until, I guess, LimeWire became defunct, I would spend hours looking for MP3s that I would download, and I'd get my sister to put onto a mix CD because I had no idea how. I remember I had this black and white Sony Walkman, and I used to bump Will Smith's Boom Shake the Room on repeat. For months, I was playing that song. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I think it was Will Smith that actually got me into hip hop. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the genre for a couple different reasons. The first was that I loved music already. I grew up with music in the house. My dad's a musician. My mom was playing music all the time. So I grew up with music around. So obviously when I hear good music, I'm going to fuck with it. But the second aspect of hip hop that had me so captivated was the emphasis on wordplay. So there was the actual lyrical content, right? The metaphors and storytelling, double entendres, all that kind of stuff. But also this kind of sonic shape shifting that artists would do. I can use Eminem as an example. The way he would bend syllables and make otherwise unrhymable words rhyme. To me, that shit was fascinating. And so hip hop simultaneously fed my hunger for music and my fascination with language. It wasn't until maybe high school that I really dove headfirst down the rabbit hole. I became obsessed. I would talk about music constantly, like for hours. My friends probably got annoyed, but I was always ready to debate any hip hop related topic. Like I was ready. I was locked and loaded, ready to go. And as I got older, I began to look at my obsession through a critical lens. So what was it that made hip hop so intriguing to me? Was it just the catchy melodies, the instrumentals? Was it just the lyrics and wordplay, the writing? I think all those things combined were definitely a part of it, but another huge part was the emphasis on originality and freedom of expression. It was the emphasis on authenticity, which I think is one of the biggest aspects of hip hop. Following this line of thinking, I came to wonder, how far should we take this emphasis on authenticity? How far should we take it, and how far does it really matter? Like, to what extent do we really care? I get that you don't want artists lying on tracks, but okay, let me give you an example. So a lot of hip hop artists come from underprivileged areas, violent areas. They grew up around drugs and gangs. And so they rap about their reality. And that's what they always say. They're always saying we're showing a reality, showing a reality. Okay. So you're being authentic, but at what point is showing your reality, talking about your reality, at what point does that become the glorification of violence, or does it? I really don't know if it does. The thing is, I'm not really concerned with telling artists what they should or shouldn't do. I have no skin in the game. I wouldn't tell any artist what they can and can't make. I wouldn't tell any artist what is and isn't art. So my questions around this topic really revolve around the audience and myself, right? Why should I support, or why do I support this violent music? Why am I even interested in it in the first place? So obviously violent art can be fun, right? We're talking action movies, even horror movies, violent video games. I mean, I've seen John Wick. I've played Grand Theft Auto. I'm not going to sit here and say that video games cause violence or violent movies should be banned. And I'm also not saying that rappers shouldn't make violent music. But the thing is, video games and violent movies like that are not presented as reality. A lot of violence in hip hop is presented as real, either as real events that have transpired or as events that were likely to have transpired. A lot of rappers, they've made it out the gutter, but a lot of them, they still rap like they're back there. And so why do I listen to music about real violence or fake real violence? Again, I'll use Eminem as an example. There's a difference between hyperbolic violence and realistic violence. Like in Eminem's song 3 a.m., I think it's 3 a.m., he talks about chopping people up and bathing in their blood. And that's some dark shit. But it's clearly hyperbole. It's clearly fake. It's clearly artistic. If you consider that art, which I do. But violence is clearly used as an artistic device in a lot of Eminem's music. I mean, he talks about decapitating his baby mama's head and driving around LA with her head in the passenger seat. So it's clearly used as an artistic device. It's not meant to be real. But then you have artists like, maybe I'm dating myself here, but you have artists like 50 Cent. His song Heat is super violent. This is off Get Rich or Die Trying. I don't know why I'm using this as an example. It's an old ass song, but I was just listening to him recently, actually. That's why. Heat is super violent, and he talks about getting in a shootout, and then once the other guy's running away, 50 sprays him in the back with the AK. It's violent, and the thing is, it's presented realistically, right? He has this whole image as being a real gangster. And maybe the image itself is fake, but we treat it like it's real. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm really saying, to be honest. These are just random thoughts in my head. So I don't really know where I'm going with that. I just think it's good to reflect on the reasons you're partaking in something that either could potentially be destructive or comes from a destructive root, or is just negative in general. But I do have questions about the responsibility of the hip hop audience, of the listener. Do we encourage violence through listening? I'll give you an example. Tekashi 6ix9ine. He involved himself in real crime to create this authentic gangster image. This guy, I'm pretty sure he worked at a bodega. He worked at like a little store, a little corner store. He was not this blood like he says he was. Actually, for that first song that blew up, Gummo, all those bloods in the video, he met them that day when he pulled up to the video shoot. He didn't know any of them, maybe one or two, but he created that image to be accepted by the hip hop community. So I don't know if that's because artists really think or really feel like they need to have this aggressive, macho, hyper-violent persona to be accepted, or if they're just stupid. Because obviously there are mainstream artists who don't toe this line. There are stupid, successful mainstream artists that don't feel the need to put on this facade of a hyper-violent, aggressive gangster. Artists like Kanye, artists like Chance, Kendrick, J. Cole. These are hugely successful artists that don't present themselves in this way. So obviously that lane is open for other people. But for some reason, maybe he's just a product of his environment, and maybe people where he's from, you know, they don't really fuck with this shit. But I don't know, maybe he just saw it as an easy way of going viral, and maybe all he wanted was the fame. Maybe he didn't care about the music. But I just think people seeing faking this persona as a valid way, or as a legitimate way to gain notoriety, is on us now. Because there are so many different lanes for real art, like for real talented artists that we could be supporting, and instead we support idiots like Tekashi 6ix9ine. And we're also supporting, and it's not just Tekashi, I don't mean to just rip on him, but you got artists like Tay-K, Bobby Shmurda, who's doing time right now. And again, I'm a hypocrite because back in 2014, when Hot Nigga was playing in every club, I was one of those guys getting hype. But you also got artists like Tay-K, who was on the run for like, what was that? So like murder? Or while he was on the run, he murdered someone? Like, that shit's fucked up. It's one thing to still listen to their music, because a lot of people can separate the art from the artist. Quick little tangent here. I can do that in certain instances. Like, I'll still bump MJ. I listen to Michael Jackson a lot. But I feel kind of weird listening to R. Kelly. And I don't know why I'm cool with Michael Jackson. I mean, I'm not cool with Michael Jackson, but I'm cool with his music. But with R. Kelly, I feel a little queasy. But aside from that, aside from still messing with the music, I see people putting online like free Tay-K. Like, bro, that's weird. You like their art so much that you want convicted murderers to be released? With like, what does that even, are you like, you're just stupid. You're actually retarded. And so I'm wondering if the audience's obsession with authenticity is causing people to want too much. Do you want people to be too real? Can you be real without being fucking violent? Basically, just as I get older, I'm seeing through this bullshit in hip hop. There's so much more you could do artistically than just violence for violence's sake. And I'm not hating on gangster rappers. Maybe it sounds like I am. I'm not trying to hate on gangster rappers. I'm not trying to hate on violence in music, because I think it can be done well. I think it is artistic. It can be done in an artistic manner, but we let too many shitty artists get through and influence the culture with their bullshit. I really don't know what I'm talking about right now. Even if it is just a reflection of their environment, don't you think it's weird for us who didn't grow up in the trenches to bump to songs about dudes stabbing each other, shooting each other? Like, why do we like it when it's presented as reality? So that was a bit of a rant. I was kind of all over the place on that one, but moving on. So this next topic is a story. It's something that happened back in 2017 when I went to Cuba. And it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. It's something that has shaped my views on the size of the world, how I view it much smaller now, but also the interconnectedness of humanity and how we're all the same, no matter where we're from. It's the same shit. And I'd just like to share this with you guys. So as I said, back in 2017, winter 2017, I went to Cuba just as a little family vacation. And So one night I wanted to do something. So I went to this club that was attached to but unaffiliated with my hotel. I went there with my sister, and she ended up leaving early. I just stayed there, had a few drinks, was walking around, young 21-year-old Canadian guy, trying to talk to these Cuban girls. Let's just put it this way. I was having minimal success. So I ended up leaving. I decided to head back to the hotel. And as I was walking back, I walked past this guy who was speaking English on the phone, on his cell phone. And I guess he must have been hanging up just as I was walking past him. So I started talking to him. And it turns out he was Canadian. He was actually from Quebec, born in Cuba, and moved to Montreal as a child. So he was fluent in French, English, and Spanish, which is pretty crazy. He was with a friend, a Cuban friend, who didn't speak English. So it was just me and the Canadian guy. We were just talking for a bit. And then the Cuban guy muttered something in French to him. And I was like, oh shit, you speak French. Now, we both spoke terrible French. I went through French immersion in school. So my French is, I can speak it, I can understand it, but it's pretty bad. And his French was pretty bad, about the same level. He actually learned French to speak with family in France. I think he learned on the phone, which is pretty crazy. I wish I remembered these guys' names, but I don't. So both of our French was like barely conversational level, but we were able to communicate, and it was pretty dope. We went from maybe too loudly discussing the women in the vicinity to talking about music. And the music actually opened up a conversation about some much heavier shit. So we were talking about music, and I was asking what kind of music they listened to down there. He was asking the same thing. We were both kind of into hip hop, but he had a very limited understanding of it. I guess because the internet isn't as widespread as it is here, and their government is really repressive. So there's just a lot of, also the language barrier, right? He's not going to listen to as much English music as I am, obviously. And I had a bit of music downloaded onto my phone. So I was showing him some. I think I showed him The Game. I showed him, the documentary by The Game. I definitely showed him some Jay-Z. Yeah, probably The Blueprint or maybe the Black Album. Maybe both, actually. But his face lit up when I showed him Curtis Mayfield. This guy never heard Move On Up before. And they never heard Touch the Sky where Kanye sampled it. But when I played Move On Up, this guy's whole demeanor changed. It was like instant comfort. He just became like much more open. And the conversation then began to move away from music and more towards just what was going on in Cuba in general. We were talking about social issues. We were talking about politics. This guy was openly criticizing his government. And this is something that Cubans don't really do. Behind closed doors, sure. But they're damn sure not going to be doing this just out on the street. But for whatever reason, through this music, he became comfortable enough with me to express his views. This really opened my eyes to the fact that music can transcend cultures and political systems. It can break down language barriers, and it can bridge gaps and create connections between people who would otherwise never have the chance to communicate on an equal footing. This is something that I'll take to my grave, the power of music. The universal love and appreciation for music across cultures is something that I think can't be denied. And this is just one example of the power of music. I'm curious if anyone else has had a really profound experience relating to music. If you do and you'd like to share it, drop a comment or shoot me a message on social media, and maybe I can share it on the next episode of Music Talk. That's all I got for you today. I hope I've left you guys with something to think about. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. Until next time, peace.